with that, let me introduce our two thought leaders that we're about to hear from formally, and I'm very excited for this. I've used Dr. Hamilton's work in my own work, and it's been impactful. So I'm going to go over her bio, and then I'll say a little bit about my brother Said and a bit about his bio. So Marilyn, she's a co-founder of Integral City Meshworks Incorporated and author of Integral City book series. She addresses complex global challenges at the intersection, I would add, of climate, water, energy, food, and culture. Big, big, big things for any city, um, and finance as well. Through the lens of the master code of care and a framework of 12 intelligences and 5 integral maps that align self, others, place, and planet. Everything, pretty much. A very integral way of thinking of it. Her methodologies, including meshworking and appreciative inquiry, of which I'm a fan as well, empower teams of citizens, civic leaders, entrepreneurs, and third sectors of co-creating well-being in the third sector to co-create well-being in cities and the bioregions. Through programs with Findhorn College, Ubiquity University, and Humanity Rising, she has trained regenerative practitioners in over 70 cities worldwide. Quite the thought leader, quite the just heavy academic sharing, but more importantly, just a very accessible human being and ready to engage at any level, can talk to anybody at any point in time. So be there presidents in some country far away, or be there indigenous folks struggling with water problems. She could converse at all those levels. And a bit about Said. So Said is a human evolutionary theorist and leading authority on applying stage development theory to large-scale societal transformation. And that's very much his mission in life. And he's very focused on that, I would add. He is the author of Memenomics, great book, The Next Generation of Economic Systems, and forthcoming Second Sapiens, although Second Sapiens is now with us. I have my copy. And, as I read it, I'm going, I have to step aside and say, oh, he's nailing it every page. I'm thinking, this is an amazing thing. So you're just an excellent read, brother. The Rise of Planetary Mind and the Future of Humanity. I kind of interjected my own thoughts because I think the book is so excellent. It's a visionary manifestation exploring regenerative economics. This is what this book is about. And the evolution of consciousness in the Anthropocene. His work has been translated into 20 languages, and he has delivered keynote talks worldwide on cultural economics, sustainability, and systematic change. Founder of the Memenomics Group and co-founder of the Center for Human Emergence, Middle East, Said brings a rich background that includes a prior career in real estate development in Boston, so it's very contextually grounded in what this topic is today. He knows all about it. A close associate of the late Dr. Don Beck, who was the co-creator of Spirodynamics. And both Said and I have traveled and spent a lot of time with Dr. Beck, as did Marilyn. He has lectured on transformative leadership at institutions such as the Adidas Graduate School and the University of Virginia. His insights have appeared in Newsweek, Cosmos Journal, Medium, and NPR, earning him recognition as one of the world's boldest thought leaders, and very much is that. I mean, I think of it like this: as if forgive me if my metaphor is not really spot on, but that's the way I feel about it. Is biodynamics sort of is the Old Testament, Second Sapiens is the New Testament. So because he has taken and up-leveled and broadened the very thing that Dr. Beck and Claire W. Graves, his mentor, had intended to do, Said took the mantle and brought it to a whole nother level. And I'm so appreciative of having these two individuals to kick off this conversation about how to be realistic and practical with some of the more abstract kinds of things that go through the heads of a lot of integral and spiral dynamics practitioners. So you got people here who can go way up high and they can come right down to the ground. And so with no further ado, I turn it over to these two wonderful thought leaders, Marilyn and Said, my
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you so much, Daryl, for that wonderful introduction. Said, I'm going to turn it over to you to start our conversation.
Oh. Okay, I do appreciate that, Marilyn. In the spirit of Earth Day and the mission of Living Cities Earth, I'd like to maybe begin with offering really some of the background research that I've done for my newest book, Second Sapien. And that really has been a book that was 8.5 years in the making. And it really all started with me and Don having a discussion about why weren't we able to address all the existential problems that were appearing back in 2015 and 2016. And what I recall him repeatedly saying is that, Said, you're not zooming out far enough. For these kind of issues, such as climate change, such as issues that have to do with Earth's habitability, you really have to zoom out. You have to be viewing this from Jupiter. So in a sense, I've had to transcend my older thinking and come to begin to view life as we know it on the planet from that cosmic view of seeing Earth from outer space, from the idea that all these concepts that we have adopted as a way of modern living, modern economics, modern political systems, even some of the sustainability measures that have been undertaken since climate change has become an issue are all the creation of the human mind. And what I ran into is, in order for the perspective to change or the paradigm to shift, I really had to look for a higher level of intelligence, which slowly began to appear for me in what I call natural intelligence in the book, which, of course, Marilyn, you frame as Gaian intelligence, or Gaia's reflective organs, in accordance with James Lovelock. And so, to me, and again, Daryl, you mentioned, me having the courage to stand somewhere and criticize the existing paradigm. That's really what I'm doing. I've taken that brave stance in looking at things from a perspective of what what I call the anthropogenic Gaian sciences. There's a very small community in the world that really specializes in those planetary measures, and it took me a long time to research them and find them and see how they relate to us and how matters on Earth are changing, how the different planetary systems are reacting to our activity as a byproduct of our modern life. And what I came, having had the background in finance and real estate development and macroeconomics, I came to view our activity since the age of the Enlightenment as something that has been detrimental to the health of the Earth. And what we need to do is shift from what we think is best for Mother Nature to think what Mother Nature wants us to do. And in that shift, I've noticed a transition back to the way things were before the Enlightenment. In a sense, we're transcending the intelligence that had given us everything that we have known in the last 500 years, but we're taking it back and nesting it in the intelligence that existed before Western civilization emerged, that reconnects us with the wisdom of being close to the Earth, having a close relationship with all other species on Earth, and having really a mythic or a spiritual connection with the cosmos. So that's where I'm coming to this from. And a big part of it is I have embarked on the idea, after doing the research and listening to those scientists that I talked about, the elite scientists that really know the research. After listening to them and seeing how what we're doing has not affected the degree to which the different planetary systems are collapsing, I have come to the conclusion that as a humanity, we have to adopt a theory of degrowth, that the entire model of GDP doesn't work anymore. That the idea that we measure the worth of culture, the worth of humanity through its balance sheet is something that could no longer be applied. So how do we listen to Mother Nature, adopt ideas of degrowth, and then adapt those to what we're doing? So, in a sense, my perspective takes, everything, all the great stuff that Marilyn has done, what Don has done, what Ken has done, and really asks these questions. How would Mother Nature think about this? And because of that, I created the Gaiametry protocols and the shift that needs to take place from us being informed, but by what one of the social scientists I quote, William Catton, he authored the theory of the human exceptionalism paradigm, where we see everything through what the space between our ears tells us is the best for us. We need to switch to a new paradigm that's called the new ecological paradigm. And in the process, we sort of subordinate our intelligence to the greater intelligence of what Mother Nature is. So we begin to listen to feedback loops. We begin to listen to how we adopt our real estate development activities, our human activity in its entirety, economic or otherwise, to accommodate what Mother Nature is telling us. And what it's telling us is that we need to be, more judicious in taking care of her, because we reach certain tipping points where she's not as resilient as she used to be in taking care of us. And unless we're aware of that, none of this is going to matter. No urban planning is going to matter. No, smart, intelligent, integral cities are going to matter. No green design that achieves, the Platinum Awards. None of that's going to matter. So this is my approach. It's a macro and a mega perspective of what, what the purpose of life, or what the purpose of smart urban developing and integral urban developing is all about. So my perspective is, adds that layer of, questioning that we need to add to the protocols when we ask what is, future, what are future cities all about? What is, integral urban design all about?
And yeah, so Said, I think that's really amazing, because I don't think you were able to participate in the session that was going parallel to our start here, where we heard from Dr. Jude Currivan, and she was talking about her perspective of the story of Gaia. And, when you invited me, you gave me the honor to write the foreword to your book. And after reading the book, I would say that it's an amazing book, as Daryl said, and it's also very challenging. But you gifted me a word, and that was Gaiametry. And I was fascinated with that word as soon as I came across it. How would Mother Nature think? How would Mother Nature measure? And Jude took us not only from the local to the global, but also to the cosmic. And I think your perspective from Jupiter is a cosmic one, and it gives what will Mother Nature say, or what would she comment. It gives us a way to really shift and develop and push our horizons out. And it isn't always easy to do that, but I do think that something that Lev has pointed to, and other things he said, is to have the curiosity of a child. And I think a child could imagine going to Jupiter and looking back on Earth, and imagine that things would look a lot different from Jupiter than they would even from our moon, or even from the grandest scale like James Lovelock proposed, of thinking about Gaia as a living system. So I really feel that what you've introduced in both this comments just now and in your book is something that can completely help us redefine some of what we wanted to explore today in regards to real estate. Because, you point to the kinds of constraints that we have to understand in order to be good beings as Gaian beings. But I don't think too many real estate people think about the footprint or the manifestation, the artifacts that we both produce for our real estate, but also that they are part of a living system now. You pointed out that I think about not only the cities as living systems, but in borrowing from James Lovelock, I thought, okay, we are the reflective organs he's talking about. The cities are. Our organizations, our organelles, our individuals in the cities are like cells. So when I'm thinking about how do we reimagine real estate, we have to think about our relationship as individuals, our organizations and the patterns that we're bringing to do the work and the functions that we want in our cities, and the cities themselves as living beings of this living planet. So that's some of the ways that I intersect with your work, Said, and why I'm so inspired to be in this conversation with you today.
Oh, thank you, Marilyn. Thank you. My journey with real estate development has really come a long way, from days way before climate change was even an issue, from restoring historic buildings in Boston to really renovating apartment buildings and converting them to condominiums, and then for about 5 or 6 6-year period, I worked in Arizona, where development was encouraged. You just go out, pick the plot of land you want to develop on, submit subdivision plans, and build from the ground up. And that was about 26, 27 years ago. And in a place like Arizona, where water, at the time that I did my development, there wasn't even an issue about water because the population wasn't as big. Arizona hadn't even used its fully allotted share of the Colorado water, and many of the communities tapped into the aquifer that's underground. And so, although part of the plans to approve a subdivision was for a developer to provide a certificate that guarantees 100-year water supply, that wasn't an issue. You just take, one of your employees can, with a $25 check, can go down to the local municipality and they'll issue the certificate on the spot. Well, last year, that same town that I was building in issued a water emergency, saying that we no longer can guarantee 100-year water supply, that any developer has to arrange their own water supply. And real estate development in that community dropped by about 80%. It is simply, so that's just a microcosm of the challenges that we face. In certain areas, it's water. In certain areas, it is issues with, a coastal community being under flood stage. In other areas, like here in LA, and most of the arid West and the arid areas in the world, you're facing the possibility of spontaneous fires that are a result of climate change. So, the whole idea of how do we incorporate that knowledge into urban design, into what urban planners decide to do, I think is an essential factor of how we move forward. There needs to be updates to how we designed urban infrastructure going back 100, 150 years ago. The drainage here in our city of San Diego is considered, one of the finest cities in the world. But the last floods we had, 5 or 6 major roads were flooded where you couldn't cross. The drainage system wasn't equipped enough to accommodate the amount of rainfall that came down so quickly as a result of climate change. So we're looking at really mitigative work instead of building from the ground up. The more of our focus should go to how do we help current cities mitigate what's coming? How do we design for the next 100 years, if not 200 years? Because based on our experience with climate change, things aren't getting any better. The hot is getting hotter, the dry is getting drier, the wet is getting wetter, and the fires are just growing exponentially. So, we start with that question and say, okay, well, if we do mitigative measures and adaptation to those kinds of things at the municipal level or at the regional level, how does that inform developers who are looking to design? How do we impose restrictions on developers that say, okay, these are the parameters that we have to deal with. We're the ones who are looking out for the city for the next 100, 200 years. This is what you need to follow. And I think that would probably be the primary challenge that we look at in moving, urban cities, whether they're, whether they're completely, independent green design, top of level, integral living cities type of deal on the cutting edge. Those questions need to be asked, simply because carbon emissions don't stay over China. They're over here. They don't stay over that beautiful community behind you, Anton. They if you don't generate carbon dioxide, the ecosystem around you will more than gladly provide you with the needed carbon dioxide. So this is a systemic issue that needs to be addressed.
I was in our discussion the other day, Said, I was reminding us that I actually don't live in a city anymore. I live in an eco-village in the north of Scotland. And one of the inspirations for coming here was this is a place where we can do some experimentation with exactly what you're talking about. So we actually live on a peninsula that has actually a couple of freshwater lenses, but we have to be very careful because it's actually a desert peninsula, a sand peninsula. And even when we plant the trees that we did that have created the oasis that we live in now, those trees, of course, need the water, and the gardens that we have can go very dry because of the changing climate. But we also have experimented so that the kinds of sewage that cities want to actually change their methods of handling, we have a living machine that handles 50% of our gray water here and actually produces a higher quality of water through the reed beds that it uses than the city can provide in their sewage. So water, sewage, we also are looking at energy. We were one of the first eco-villages to actually start to use renewable energy. So we actually had chosen to use a wind turbine in the 1980s. At that time, I lived in British Columbia, Canada, and I heard about this strange eco-village in northern Scotland, and I wondered how on earth did they ever get that approved? Because the environmentalists were against the wind turbines. They didn't, at that time, understand the relationship between the renewable energy and the difficulties with what you're just pointing to, the carbon emissions from fossil fuels. So we have also been experimenting with that. And we have to also look at what is the impact in our economy, because one of the things that we have been doing over the years is actually supplying educational opportunities for people to come from around the world. Many people have Findhorn on their bucket lists, and they want to come and participate in some of the spiritual education that has been offered here. For many reasons, that has changed, but one of the things we started to do was to realize by bringing people from around the world, our carbon footprint was actually more than doubling what our very below average carbon footprint is if we just looked at ourselves, because we were attracting people to come here and they were mostly flying. So all of these things you point out in your book, how they are interconnected, and that we can't just look at them as silos of energy or water or the aspects of air pollution or groundwater management. We have to look at them as a whole ecosystem and recognize that our cities are located in ecoregions.
Yes.
And so that's, I think, what you're pointing to as being able to, again, expand our horizons about what is the impact we're having on our ecoregion and the globe itself.
Yeah.
I see Anton has his hand up.
Yeah. Let me, so just for some protocols, I was going to give the last 15 minutes to some questions from the audience. And so it's 5 minutes to wrap up. But let's go ahead and take Anton's question now. And then what I'd like to have is the next 5 minutes, Said and Marilyn, if you guys take the next 5 minutes to sort of wrap up. And then we'll open it up to anyone else who have questions. If we have no questions, we'll just return to your conversation. Okay. So Anton, go ahead. You're in mute. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Daryl. And actually, as I see, we have 20 minutes more, and my suggestion is to give 15 minutes for discussion and then 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. Yes, and I want to say, first of all, Marilyn and Said, thank you for joining this conversation. Yes, and we have a short amount of time, and this level of thinkers as you is so huge, and I want to ask you to look at the perspective of what is this integral city of now and future. It could be from this perspective of 4 quadrants integral for economics. These topics we was touching in our pre-meeting. So let's see on this perspective, what is zoom out perspective of future cities, what it need to be included there. And we touch so different things in our pre-meeting, like it should be soul touched and economic from spiritual dynamics, spiral dynamics levels we can see through this. So please share a few words about that.
Yeah, Marilyn, please. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Anton, for that, those questions and reminding us how we've explored before. I know that we have a speaker coming up in a little while, John Talbot, and he and I participated in a very large experiment here at Eco Village Findhorn, where we were looking at the Just Transitions Fund and the Just Transitions approach to how can we actually take an economy that's based on fossil fuels. If you look out into the North Sea, you will see not wind turbines, there's more and more of those coming up, but you'll see the large oil and gas platforms. And how do you change an economy that's so dependent on oil and gas? So we're looking at the economy, we were looking at the environment, we were looking at infrastructure, and we were looking at how people actually accommodate themselves, their housing. So when we pull all those together, that's really an integral challenge for a community, because the behaviors that people have, their mindset as to how they're willing to solve the challenges, their economic contributions. So if we have to change our infrastructure, how do we manage to finance that? And how do we attract and maintain economies in our community? So those are all really very deep integral perspectives that require mindsets that are open instead of arrested or closed. And so those are also aspects of thinking about what it is that we need from an integral perspective in developing any kind of human settlement. Said, what do you have to say about it?
You know, Marilyn, I want to go back to your last comment before before Anton's question, and that was how we are interconnected, and we need to be more interconnected than ever before. Interconnection, you know, Mother Nature does automatically. I mean, there's no question about how her intelligence works, and it is that interconnection that also allows us to predict when things are a danger, when you know, when cascading effects from one Earth system begin to impede on another system. And so the interdependence also creates a sense of urgency for us to collectively to do something. And so I just wanted to add that dimension, that if we think that, you know, we're emerging into this intelligence that says, oh, we have to be you know, more collaborative, more interconnected, more you know, closely allied with each other. Mother Nature has been doing it for billions of years. And so that's, you know, my last comment on that issue. Now, as far as the issue of economics, you know, I articulated in my first book, you know, how to evolve economic systems that are primarily, you know, human-made systems. And so my focus there was on macroeconomics and macroeconomic policy and monetary policy and how to change that. My focus in this book is, because it's driven by the necessity for us to pursue degrowth, till we figure out how the planetary systems operate, and the exponential science that defines them, till we start figuring out the dynamics of that, we need to come to economics from a position of degrowth. Degrowth means, in a lot of cases, people are afraid of that because it's going to affect GDP. GDP, is the largest measure of productive output, and the world's biggest fear is that we don't grow, less than 2% a year. Any growth that's under 3% is considered recessionary, and all kinds of chaos breaks out. Well, what I'm proposing in my book is to replace GDP with biometry economic protocols, and I define what those are. And really, it's a set of questions that any entrepreneur, any government leader, thank you, Anton. So these are really the things that we should be asking ourselves. One of the brightest things about natural intelligence is that it always gives us feedback loops. So before you create an economic model, do you know what the feedback loops of it are going to be? Meaning that, if you extract the raw material for your product from a certain place, are you causing environmental damage where it's being extracted? And if the answer to that is no, then you move up to the next layer. Okay, does its manufacturing add to the carbon footprint? To the beyond the carbon footprint, there are other larger footprints, and that is the material footprint and the ecological footprint. And so in this, I compare the what we consider now to be the top scientific methods in management teachings and everything else, the supply chain and how to manage supply chains. Daryl, you spend a lot of time, I recall, on that, studying Lean Six Sigma, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we focus that much on making ourselves efficient in providing an efficient supply chain, why aren't we looking at our geological, ecological supply chain? And that considers every possible action that we take as business people, as corporations, as industries, as governments, and looks at how, what is the environmental impact of extracting a raw material from a certain place. And is it, the whole idea of, switching to renewable energy from fossil fuel? Are we just moving geographically from one part of the world, but extracting things from a different part of the world? 100 miles east from me here is, the Salton Sea, which has an infinite number of precious minerals that are needed to go into batteries. Is the extraction there? And it's below sea level. So it's the extraction of that material there going to cause something to happen to our oceans? Is the transporting of that, is that going to pollute the air? I mean, it's fine, dusty sand. And, I visited the Salton Sea several times, that you really don't see. When that stuff goes into the air, is it coming into the lungs? Have we done enough research? So those are the kind of questions that we need to dig deeper into. So is the extraction from a different geographic location is impacting, Gaia, the biosphere and the ecology? Is its manufacturing doing the same? Is shipping doing the same? Is the end user, after they use it, are they impacting the environment? So that's basically the guideline on what the ecological footprint means. And so in addition to that, this set of questions here is really an integral approach that is not necessarily based on integral theory, but it addresses every level, every possible area that affects the planet. Do we have a wise government in place? A government that understands what that turquoise science is telling us, what the science of the Anthropocene and Gaian sciences are telling us, and are they willing to listen to it? The other questions we should be asking ourselves is the idea that, are the producers of the technology that we're looking at as renewable energies, are they more interested, are they equally interested in the profitability of the product more than they are in the sustainability of the planet. And we're talking about, solar panels don't last forever. At one point, they need to be recycled. And the World Bank did an extensive research about this a few years ago and found that if we are to switch to a completely green economy by 2060, we would incur, I don't even remember the figure, millions of megatons of material extractive activities on the earth. Is that extractive activity, and especially when it comes to rare minerals like silver, like you're seeing a lot, I cite a few examples like the certain mines in Chile where to get the products that we need to put into our batteries that go into electric cars, they need for every ounce of that, they need hectares and hectares of fresh water to purify. Do we have enough fresh water around the world to justify that? And the latest research from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Change says that we have breached the line of fresh water that is not drinkable fresh water. Drinkable fresh water is still good, but fresh water for other purposes, such as this, we have reached a tipping line in that too. So those are
there's need.
those are the kind of things that we
more.
should look out for, Darren.
Yeah. I want to take the last, no, thank you, Said, for that. The last 10 minutes, if there are any questions to Said or Marilyn, this is a good time to do that. 30 seconds to both of you, and then I'm going to I think I saw Lev's hand up first, but let you wrap up your thinking, Marilyn and Said, and then we got about 8 minutes to see if the folks in the gallery would like to ask you anything. Marilyn, some closing thoughts?
Yeah, I like to focus on regeneration rather than the degrowth. And I imagine that cities must become as regenerative in its material and economy as the company Interface managed to introduce when they started to work with carpet tiles. And their clients do not get to own those tiles. They simply rent or lease them. And when they're ready in their lifetime to be recycled, they're completely regenerated. And so the question I'm asking myself is, how could we do that for all of the wealth and resources accumulated in a city? So I think I need to work with somebody like Said to imagine that.
No, I thought about that very example. So thank you for bringing that up. Said, some closing thoughts, and then we'll open it up to the gallery.
Yeah, well, Marilyn, we talked about that last time we met, and what you're talking about, the idea that things become rentable and no one owns them, that tips the capitalist model upside down. And the people who hold power, the whole old good thing from Adiz's, Daryl, the cappy, people who hold power over the current economy are not going to let that happen. So you have to really pursue it case by case, company by company, conscious leader by conscious leader, and keep pushing the idea that we're facing future peril if we don't do this. What's the sense of sentencing future generations, including your own as a CEO, to death? With you having billions of dollars in your bank account, it just simply does not make sense. So the horizon,
the business models have to change.
Has to move to a higher level of consciousness.
So, Lev, you had a question. We'll start off with the gallery. I saw your hand up, but then it went down. Did you still have a question, Lev?
Yes. Thank you. Both a comment and a question. And beautifully said, just spoke about the very topic I wanted to, to focus on. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. I just see Matt, trying to maybe focusing on something. So anyway, I think it's very important because we're both visionary and very practical, implementers, and we want to see the real impact in the world. For us to be aware, which we are, of course, that most people don't speak this type of language, and most people are not aware of all those challenges. And I'll take my example, right? About 6-7 years ago, when I heard the word sustainable in either language, French, English, Russian, etc., it didn't mean anything to me. despite the fact that I'm relatively kind, relatively self-aware, relatively sort of caring about the environment, but I just never had the experience of connecting with all those, meanings. And it came through a specific person who lives in Amsterdam, and he started speaking with me about sustainable. It didn't make, again, any sense. What's sustainable? What does it mean, etc. I know for many of us, we're aware of this for, tens of maybe 15, 20, 30 years. But for most people, even today, sustainable doesn't mean much, number one. If we are talking about regenerative, same experience. Maybe 2-3 years ago, I heard about it from Marilyn, from Pavel Luksha, etc. It didn't mean much. Of course, I realized the importance of taking care of Earth, etc. But when you have all those daily urgencies and motivations, necessity to cater for your family and your business, etc., you don't think much about those things. And I know Arki has a lot of experience, so she'll talk maybe next. But again, it was a learning process for me to now change my ways in a minor way, like those paper cups, or in a more sort of substantial ways, like what kind of business models we implement, etc. So the point I'm trying to make, and also maybe ask a question, but say it's partly answered, is that you need to work case by case, you need to educate, you need to really connect with people on a deeper personal level, those people in position of power,
Right.
the CEOs, etc. And we want to really
Thank
have.
you, Lev. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I want to get a couple others. But I think we got your
No,
point. So
Daryl, thank you for trying to cut me off, but I will not, let you do it. Just half a minute. The point I'm trying to make, we gather here to really make an impact in 10,000 cities all over the earth. So we really need to think about all the perspectives, the higher views we have, but also find very specific ways to connect people who change their cities today, right?
okay.
And what I mean by this is we need to focus on talking their language, connecting with them, and then together moving to the next sort of paradigm and the next perspective on how we develop integrally and caring our places. Thank you, Arti, on to you.
Thank you, Lev, and thank you, Marilyn and Said. This has been wonderful, even though I walked in late. But just to answer your question, Lev, that yes, sustainability as a term and even regeneration as a term is not helping me be conscious of the action that I'm performing and how do I move from my present action to a better action. So the term that I'm actually promoting, even at the level of UN right now, is outward sustainability, inward nature reverence. Because when I'm reverent, then I know, do I have integrity? Mm-hmm. Do I have love and compassion? Am I sensitive? Am I discerning? Right? That is one. Second, to the point of our present day governance systems, and trust me, this is a project I started during COP29 over a dinner conversation. And Lev, I'm sure that you're aware that Ferrell had worked something out, but I can't drive that alone. And the project was that when I look at the world leadership, so at high-level political forum this year, we only have 17% attendance. That is saying something, because if the leadership of the world is exhausted in making decisions, also they're operating from a place of guilt and pressure. Who's addressing them? Can we put together a proposition? And by the way, the person I crafted this with was the Director General for the European Energy Research Alliance. And these are people who give a lot of insight to the leadership across Europe in terms of the political decision making. And he was so kicked about it. He says, in my entire career, I've never heard of an idea like this, which is wanting to engage with the political leadership, to debrief them, to open a space for them to vent out and express what they're feeling, what they're going through, and help them. I think that is another level of undertaking that we have to sort of build a pathway, a framework for. Thank you.
True reverence. Thank you so much. And that brings us to the hour. And we're going to take a 5-minute break. And when we come back, we'll hear from our next speaker, Leonid Kozlov. So thank you all so much. We're going to take 5 minutes and we'll be back in 5. Set your clocks. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And maybe while we have these breaks, we can continue the conversation, but please, we can be in time. And if Said and Marilyn, you have few words to give feedback on those topics to Lev. And
I would comment on what Artie
Yeah.
just said. I thought it was
Yeah.
brilliant. And I think that the reason that that is really a brilliant idea is, one of the things that the framers of both spiral dynamics, maybe not so much integral, but spiral dynamics for sure, was you must be able to speak to people where they are at. And so I think that's what Artie is pointing to. And what's more, she is bringing in a suggestion of nature sacredness that is something that maybe many people can respond to in ways that doesn't sound like it's tech heavy, but maybe heart opening. And I think that makes it really attractive. And I think it could probably span a number of different levels of complexity. So thanks, Artie.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Also, to your comments, Artie, very appreciative of what you had to say. In spiral dynamics, it's not only speaking to people at the level where they are, but also to speak in truth to power at every concentric holonic structure.
Yeah.
So the idea that a few people at the ground level can change the world, people who still believe in that don't know who has controlled the world over the last 2-3 decades or so. It has to be not only bottoms up, but also top down. So what you're doing with the political leaders, the European Economic Council you mentioned, or someone who holds that position, it is absolutely essential to simultaneously address bottoms up and top down movement. That is so critical for change.
So that those holons are like constantly in the way I'm actually sort of crafting solutions. So this was something to do with drone-led mapping. And what is it that we want to map? I said, okay, let's cut across right till outer space.
From Jupiter, right?
Yes. So the whiteboard became a little small for me, so I'm planning to get to the floor.
Right. And what people might not know, Artie, is that you're not only working at the UN and global level, but you're very practically oriented in construction, technology, and manufacturing in India, and received awards for that too. So I know we're talking to somebody who can talk to people where they're at, both on the manufacturing floor as customers, whatever, as well as thinking globally. So thank you for bringing that.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And I also want to say a few words following this topic about which language we are using. And especially for me, it was a bit challengeable, this topic which were highlighted in our day, like this integral real estate development. Then we transform it to integral urban development because it have a gap of this big ideas and these 3,000 developers from all the globe, which are focusing right now on some kinds of profit and maybe some creative solutions. They can understand it and how to rise the price of the land and make their projects more attractive for investments. So these kind of topics, they can be the impact point. From this point, we can give them big picture of what it is. And in my view, there is more and more people need this sustainable project. And this part of the market, if we will speak in these terms in Orange way, it's growing, and we can provide these meanings to them somehow, and then they can change their mind to more regenerative and other things. So thank you very much, Said and Marilyn, and I give the word to Daryl and Leonid is also here. And
excellent, very good conversation. Thank you, Marilyn, Said. That was just excellent way to kick off everything, and great questions and comments.